Wonderful Pussy Willows by Jerem Wexler. In early spring, when the grass starts to peek through the warming earth and it still occasionally snows, the buds on a plant related to the weeping willow tree start to grow. You will find the plant in damp, slightly shady areas, or next to and when it floods, even in water. Some of the buds on this plant are soft, fuzzy, and white. If you were to stroke one, it would feel like a cat's silky fur. In fact, the soft white thing is called a catkin, a word that means small cat. People must have looked at this plant with its furry catkins and been reminded of pussycats and pussycat tales. Perhaps that is why this relative of the weeping willow is called a pussy willow. All winter long, a special leaf, a bud scale, helps protect each catkin from the cold. As the days become warmer and the catkins larger, the bud scales are not longer needed and fall off. Catkins don't look like leaves. They don't look like flowers either. What are they? To find out, we must watch and wait. The warmer the days, the faster the catkins grow. When they are about an inch long, something new appears on them. Very tiny flowers. The flowers began to form last fall. They were insulated over the winter and early spring by the catkin hairs. Now it is time for the flowers to grow. Pussy willows produce two different kinds of flowers. One kind is called a pistillate. Some people call them female flowers. The catkin that holds them is called a female or pistillate catkin. A catkin with pistillate flowers looks like this. Actually, a catkin can be thought of as an arrangement of many flowers in a special pattern. The other kind of flower is called staminate. Some people call them male flowers. The catkin that holds them is called a male or staminate catkin. A catkin with staminate flowers looks like this. All the flowers on a pussy willow plant are either pistillate or staminate. For this reason, some people refer to a pussy willow plant as either a pistillate or a staminate plant, a female plant or a male plant. You rarely find both kinds of flowers growing on the same plant. Every catkin contains many, many flowers. Each flower is about the size of this dash. Using a magnifying glass plus a pair of fine tweezers, it's possible to remove a single flower. This is a pistillate flower. It has no petals, but it does have three important parts. At the top, in the middle, and on the bottom. At the top of the flower is a little platform called the stigma. It will release something useful from the male flower. In the middle is a tube-like structure called the style. At the bottom of the style is a roundish area called the ovary. The ovary contains something special inside. Hidden from view are a dozen or more female reproductive cells, egg cells, called ovules. This may look like two flowers, but it is really one staminate male flower. It too has no petals. It consists of two round yellow knobs called anthers, which sit upon two thread-like stalks called filaments. The male reproductive cells develop within the anthers. When the cells are matured, the anthers open, releasing their contents, bright yellow grains of pollen. However, the pollen grains themselves are not the reproductive cells. They contain the reproductive cells. pussy willow pollen is very lightweight. The slightest breeze can pick it up and carry it long distances. But there is another more important way that pussy willow pollen gets transported. When a hairy insect like a bee visits male flowers in search of nectar, some of the pollen grains stick lightly to its hair. Then if the bee visits female flowers, some of the pollen grains brush off onto a sticky, tacky substance produced by the stigmas. A pollen grain that lands on the stigma of a female flower sends a pollen tube down the style to the ovary. The male reproductive cells travel down the style and unite with the ovules in the ovary. This process is called fertilization. Once a male cell and a female cell unite, something wonderful is underway. The fertilized ovules start to change into seeds. At first, the seeds are microscopic, just like embryo seeds. As the weeks go by and the embryo seeds develop, the ovaries swell. The catkin themselves become longer and fatter. The stigmas and styles, having served their purpose for fertilization, dry and shrivel. Once the male flowers have shed their pollen, the anthers and filaments turn brown and die. Eventually, the whole male catkin will fall off the plant. About this time, something else happens. The plant's leaves push their way out of their buds and reach full growth in a matter of days. The bright green leaves are long and narrow. Each has a little skirt at its base. The green color comes from a pigment called chlorophyll. In the presence of sunlight, chlorophyll helps turn water and carbon dioxide into sugars and starches, food for the plant. In the process, oxygen is released into the air, which animals, including humans, breathe. The pussy willow leaves grow from the stem in a pattern that enables each leaf to receive a good share of sunlight. As the weeks pass, the female catkins continue to grow and change. The hairs drop off. Now you can clearly see the ovaries that have been enlarging to make room for the seeds ripening within. Most people use the wood fruit to refer to a sweet, juicy, or crisp fruit. However, a botanist, a plant scientist, uses the word fruit to describe an ovary that contains ripe or mature seeds. Fruit, that is, ovaries with ripe seeds inside, vary great in size, shape, and form. They also have many different names. The fruit of a pea plant is called a pod. The fruit of a maple tree is called a key. The fruit of a tomato plant is called, no, not a tomato, but a berry. And the fruit of the pussy willow is called a capsule. The picture at the left shows many ripening capsules. More time has passed. It's now early June. The ripe capsules begin to open. If it's not raining, the warm, dry June air tickles the contents into fluff. With every breeze, bits of silkiness go floating off. Eventually, leaving behind the empty capsule, if it's raining, the fluffy material becomes wet and matted. No matter how strong the breeze, the seeds are never distributed. Seeds? Where are the seeds? Look closely. Attached to each bit of fluff is a very small seed. How small? This small. Small as it is, the seed contains a tiny plant, an embryo ready to sprout. The seed also contains a supply of food and water that can nourish the embryo, but only for a few days. So after leaving its capsule, a pussy willow seed must quickly land in warm, damp soil that gets some sunlight. Otherwise, the tiny plant inside will die. If a seed does land in a good spot, the embryo sprouts within 12 to 24 hours. Growth is rapid. The first leaves push through the earth within a few days. This photo was taken on the 7th of July. Six weeks later, by the 18th of July, several large leaves have appeared. Now the plant is 2.5 months old. Finally, it's the end of the summer, the end of the plant's first growing season. This pussy willow is 3.5 months old and over 30 inches tall. It's approximately 1,000 times larger than the seed from which it grew. Suppose you grew that fast, how tall would you have been when you were 3.5 months old? If you are reading this book any time between January and early March, and you know where some pussy willows are growing, ask your parents if they will help you collect a few branches, 12 to 15 inches long. Of course, make sure that the owner of the plant doesn't mind. When you get home, place the branches in a container of water in a warm spot in the house. Be sure to change the water every 3 or 4 days. In a week or so, the catkins will start to emerge from their winter buds. After the catkins are about 1 inch long and are soft and furry, you may remove a few off the branches and place them in a separate dry container. In a few days, the branches will become dry, and the catkins will stop growing, but they will stay just as they are, soft and furry, for months and even years. The catkins on the branches left in the water will continue to get larger, but in a few weeks something unexpected will happen. Some of the branches will start growing roots. Later in springtime, when the soil is warm and soft, find a spot which you believe will be damp most of the year. Take a branch and trim the roots so that they are 2 to 3 inches long. Dig a hole about 3 inches deep and large enough to accept the roots. Then plant the rooted branch. Won't you feel good 5 or 10 years from now when you look at your tall pussy willow and know that you helped transform a few short branches into a lovely plant like this? And perhaps someday your very own children will cut branches from that pussy willow and begin their own plant. Pussy willows begin a large family of plants. More than 80 different species of willows grow in North America. Some willows are shrubs and some are trees. Many flower at the same time and tend to cross-pollinate, producing hundreds of hybrids in addition to the 80-plus species. Whether a pussy willow is a hybrid or not, its catkins are interesting and beautiful. Enjoy them. The end.